Look, did the Cubs have to do what they had to do based on the circumstances? I guess so. But my frustration is it never really should have gotten here. And this goes into a bigger discussion that I want to kind of have about just that needs to be had about baseball, which is, is rebuilding really real? Is it really necessary? I kind of look at rebuilding and I'm like, it's just a money saver for organizations that don't want to pay their players big money. They don't want to invest in a winning product. You look at the Cubs, and in 2015, right, they go to the NLCS. They get swept by the Mets, but they were this young team. They had the Rookie of the Year. They had an emerging superstar in Rizzo. They had players like Baez and Addison Russell who fell off, and Jason Hayward on this big money deal. It hasn't worked out. It's part of the reason that they're in this position now. But, Jason Hayward and Kyle Schwarber had a great rookie year, and you're looking at what happened in 2015. And then obviously 2016, they were by far the best team in baseball. They were one of the best teams I've ever seen in baseball. They go on and they win the World Series. And then after that, they go to the NLCS in 2017. They go to the wild card game and lose. They had to play out game 163 against the Brewers, lose the wild card game, miss the playoffs the next year. And then we all know what happened last year with the Cubs in the playoffs, where the Marlins and the Cubs face off in this 3-game series at Wrigley Field. And the Marlins swept them right out of town, and they made it look. The Cubs went down without a whimper. They scored 1 run in the series, and it was an Ian Happ home run. And here they are. So they end up in this position because of their own doing in my eyes. And I kind of look at it and I'm saying, you had this core where nobody thought this core, it looked like a dynasty to a lot of people. I think, it looked like they were about to run the league with, the Cleveland baseball team who they face, the Indians who they faced in the World Series that year, and some of these, the Dodgers, and it looked like it was going to be the Dodgers and the Cubs and the NLCS, year after year after year. And now you're looking at them and they're fielding a AAA roster, and the Marlins are favored because Wilson Contreras is on the IL, and Rafael Ortega has been great recently. He's been on this great run, and he's been kind of a, sensation for the Cubs in the post-Bryant Rizzo Baez era. But it's just crazy to me that, I look around the league, and I was at the game where Rizzo was, first introduced as a Yankee, and he hits the home run, and he basically swept the Marlins that weekend, right? And then Baez, I just saw, goes on the injured list for the Mets, and Bryant is out, and he's going to, possibly win a World Series with the Giants. That team is so fantastic. And man, it's just crazy how the Cubs got here, to think about it, where they were this, possible dynasty. They were a burgeoning dynasty, and now they're here, and the Marlins are possibly a better team than them. I mean, the Cubs have a better record, but it's just crazy, 52-65. I mean, they're 13 games under 500. They were a first place team at one point this year, and then they just fell apart. And I just think it's such a shame that this is a part of the game, this rebuilding thing, this rebuilding bullshit, I should really call it. It's bullshit. It's what it is, where owners, big money owners, the Ricketts family is worth billions and billions of dollars, and they just decide we're going to offer Anthony Rizzo a 5-year, $70 million contract that he's clearly worth way more than, and we're not really going to give Chris Bryant a big money extension offer. We're not going to extend Javier Baez. These are superstar players. It's bullshit to me, and it's not just the Cubs, right? You see it elsewhere. And obviously for me, it hurts more because it's the Cubs, and I loved this team and I loved that core, but it happens too often in baseball. The Marlins have undergone it a few times with that World Series team where they had all these great players and they didn't want to pay them and they shipped them right out the door. Obviously I think the rebuild in 2017 was very different circumstances, right? Like there are some situations that teams can find themselves in where they're left with no choice but to trade their superstars, on big money contracts, where the Marlins are in $400 million of debt. But when you're a team like the Cubs in a big market, you've got big money owners, you've got great players, and you just refuse to pay them. That's such a bullshit message to the fans, and just so ridiculous to say, we care about winning. Stick with us. We'll be there. Give us a few more years. We did it once. We can do it again. and I just think that's just a bad message to send to the fans. And it just shows, the Ricketts, look, they got the World Series, right? And they will, Chicago and Cubs fans will always be grateful for that World Series. And they've done a great job around Wrigley Field. When I went there in 2016, it was, it's completely different from when I went there just, a few months ago. But I mean, it's just crazy to me that you just send it in like that and you just say, we have the money to pay these guys, but I'm just going to refuse to do it. And I'm going to send, tell the fans to trust us and that we're going to build it back up and we're going to do it the right way. And this is, all part of the plan to get these guys back. And we're going to trade for Yu Darvish for some high schoolers. And, I think they got some pretty good prospects. They got Peter Crow Armstrong, who's a great prospect for Javier Baez. And I think, if you want to ignore the context, that's a pretty good deal, expiring contract, you get a really good prospect. But Bryant, Baez, and Rizzo meant so much more to this city than just being good baseball players, especially Anthony Rizzo. I mean, that one just stung so much. He was the captain, the heart and soul of the Cubs. And I know I'm ranting for a long time, and I want to get you guys in on this to talk about this, topic of rebuilding. But he meant so much to the Cubs and to the organization and to the city of Chicago. He was such a good Samaritan, so charitable. He was a cancer survivor, and he was always visiting hospitals and kids and doing all this stuff. And, Bryant said he wanted to play his whole career there. And Javi Baez, these guys loved Chicago. And for them to be treated the way they were is so ridiculous. I mean, and now look at the team they're sending out there to their fans. I still love the Cubs, and it's my dog Honeybee joins me on the screen. But, look at this lineup they're sending out there. Matt Duffy. I texted my buddies from Chicago the other day. Who is Frank Schwindel? Like, what is a Frank Schwindel? David Bodie, who's been a utility player, was supposed to be kind of the, Ben Zobrist 2.0 when the Zobrist thing happened. And, he's a good player and he's solid, but it hasn't really, worked out. Patrick Wisdom, actually, here, you want the bright spot for the team. Patrick Wisdom is a legitimate Rookie of the Year candidate. I think he's got the highest OPS among all rookies, and he leads them in home runs as well. He's a good player. Robinson Chirinos, Ian Happ. I mean, look at some of these names. John Eshwe Fargas was on the Mets earlier this year. Yeah. And he played the Marlins. If you guys remember in that series where the Marlins, the Mets lineup was in pieces because it was a AAA lineup because of all the injuries they had. Sergio Alcantara has been like a utility player for them and had a pretty good year. And then Adbert Alzolay is on the mound for them. And he was supposed to be one of the problems the Cubs had during their, generation was they never really grew a homegrown pitcher, right? So whereas the Marlins grew all these homegrown pitchers, the Cubs, it was all hitters. It was Schwarber and Bryan and Baez and Addison Russell and, whoever else you want to name. But they never really had the pitcher. Adbert Alzolay was supposed to be that pitcher, and it took him 2-3 years of being in the major leagues to really find his footing. And he's having a pretty good year this year, but for some reason he can't get lefties out. So if the Marlins have any lefties in the lineup today, which looking at it, I don't think they do because Jazz isn't in the lineup. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at a AAA lineup that they're sending out there. And to do that after what they had and to let it fizzle down to the point where you have to send a AAA lineup out there because you had to trade Bryant, Baez, and Rizzo because you mismanaged this core so poorly, just sends such a terrible message. And I just saw an article on ESPN about how to get rid of tanking, how to get rid of this plague that plagues MLB where teams are constantly rebuilding. Think about the Pirates. They're always in the shit, always rebuilding. And it's just, it's a garbage narrative. It's a really garbage narrative. And it's a fake thing that owners have created to save money, to say we're rebuilding, when actually I just think all it is a cash grab.